Welcome to the Ad Nauseam podcast, where classical gourmands everywhere can finally get their fill. Join us for a delectable discussion of Greco-Roman civilization stretching from the Minoans and Mycenaeans through the Renaissance and right down to the present. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
Welcome, listeners, to episode 52 of the Ad Nauseam podcast. Down here late night at the Vomitorium. My name is Dr. Jeff Winkle, and I'm here with my good friend, Dr. David Noe. How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing well, Jeff. I am very glad to be here. I love Roman philosophy, love Lucretius and Stoicism. This kind of thing is right up my alley.
Yeah.
It's been a long day, though, I got to say.
It is? You're still enthusiastic about it, though?
I'm still enthusiastic,
Okay.
sure, right? The classics are not going to appreciate themselves.
That's true. That's
and
our
I have
job.
to say, yeah, exactly. And I have to say that the response to these episodes has been so heartening, so gratifying from all these folks out there who like to listen to us talk on and on about the classics.
That's great. I know.
We can't disappoint the fans.
No, we can't. Even at this late hour, we're going to bring it.
We're going to bring it.
Yep.
I was reading this week some fellow popularizer of the classics.
Yes.
It was Victor Davis Hansen.
Yes.
We know who he is.
Mm-hmm.
Sent along to me, someone sent me one of his essays, and I read through it, and he said, it's really the popularizers. He doesn't like to call them popularizer because it sounds too much like vulgarizer. He said it's really the popularizers who keep the classics going. He says he likes to refer to them instead of that as expanders.
Expanders?
I didn't like
I don't
that.
like that either. Just sounds like some guy getting fat.
It does, right? Or some kind of orthodontic device. My children have braces. I'm always purchasing expanders.
Right, exactly.
I really don't think that, with all due respect to VDH,
Yeah.
I really don't think that's what we'd like to be called, expanders.
No, I'm thinking of like some pair of like Sansa belt trousers that
Yes.
just kind of grow with you.
Right.
Yeah, that's no good.
Trousers and suspenders,
Yeah.
and
I mean, I get what he's saying with popularizer. It can kind of carry kind of a, I don't know, kind of a low class quality to it.
yeah, well, it tends to mean the kind of person who doesn't have the chops, doesn't have the education and scholarly acumen to make it in the real world, so they fall back on something that's less. Now, I'd hate to think that's us. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I don't really care for popularizer. But expander?
No,
no.
That's a step in the wrong direction.
Exactly. How about broadener? I had to use a broadener once to clean out my garage, and it didn't go well.
You had to broaden your garage?
No, I'm just making stuff up.
Oh, I gotcha. Well, I mean, maybe that's a challenge for us. I want to come up with a better term.
I do too. How about it's a challenge for our listeners?
Yes. Ooh, send it in.
Send it in. Tell us, what should we be called? Popularizer doesn't sound so good.
Yeah.
Expander has
that's off the table.
a whiff of orthodontics.
Yeah, sorry, Victor.
Broadener, there's just not a lot there.
No. Well, maybe we'll have to come up with some neologism to
That'd be great. That'd be great. But first,
we got a shout out.
We got to get our shout out in.
Yes. Would you like me to give the shout out?
Yes,
today?
I would.
Yes.
I'd like you to do this one.
This goes to Martin Schmidt, who has contacted us from Augsburg, Deutschland, I believe. Yes.
Yeah.
So a hearty Guten Morgen or Guten Tag out to Martin.
Right.
Yes.
That's in the Bavaria region, if I'm not mistaken.
I have never traveled in Germany.
I'm just reading the page.
Okay. But my sense of Bavaria is like in southern Germany. That's
what
where it's a bit
my
more
sense.
mountainous, a little bit more
Teutonic,
a
right?
little bit more romantic in some degree. Yeah, so a nice place to go, as I've heard.
I'd like to go there. I've been to Saarbrücken once.
Where's Saarbrücken?
Saarbrücken's not too far from Strasbourg. It's almost directly north, a little bit west of Strasbourg.
So are we in Bavaria now?
Yeah, I don't think so. I'm not really sure.
What were you doing there?
We left Strasbourg.
Yes.
And someone said, Germany is very close by. You should go visit Germany. Okay. So we drove to Saarbrücken, drove around town a little bit, stopped off at a grocery store, bought some vegetables, some Kuchen, cookies. I don't know what those are. I'm making stuff up. I bought a really nice mechanical pencil.
Oh, I bet you could find some excellent mechanical pencils in Germany.
Germans know how to make mechanical pencils.
Yeah,
I loved this mechanical pencil.
Past tense, you don't have it anymore?
I subsequently lost it.
Oh, no.
It's probably with my watch at Delphi.
You're just leaving stuff all over the
I don't want to talk about it.
Did you have any worst? This is my last question.
Yeah, are you sure?
Yeah.
I did not have any worst.
Okay.
The,
all right.
the pun opportunities there are too rich.
I know.
I'm just going to leave them alone.
I was tossing a softball.
Yes,
but,
I know you were. So Guten Tag.
Yes.
Or Guten Morgen. to our friend Martin Schmidt from Augsburg.
Yes, excellent. Thank you, Martin, for listening and for dropping us a line.
Absolutely.
Yeah. David, what could you handle the opening quote?
I can do this.
Yes.
Yes.
What do we got?
So this is from Ovid, his Amores, and it was actually Mr. Schmidt who suggested this to us as the opening quote, which is very nice. I subsequently found out that this is included in the Martin Ferguson Smith edition. That's the Hackett edition of Lucretius's famous work.
Excellent.
So it's right there in the introduction. It goes like this: Carmina sublumis tunc sunt peritura Lucreti, exitio terras cum dabituna dies. So it's an elegiac couplet.
And this is one of these very rare, near contemporary references to Lucretius.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's one of these nice I guess we'd say intertextual, where
Yes.
one poet refers to another. Could you read the Klein, the A.S. Klein translation for us?
Yes. Klein translates it thusly: "Then the works of sublime Lucretius will endure, while there's a day left till the world's ruin."
Yeah, that's quite nice.
It's very nice. High praise from Ovid.
Well, Ovid, I have a virtually unmeasured respect for his poetic ability.
Sure.
It's just incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great.
So for him to say something nice about Lucretius, now I think Lucretius was dead before Ovid came into his own.
Certainly.
So there's no real competition.
But I mean, it's suggested that like a generation later, Lucretius's stuff is still out there, and it's
Absolutely.
appreciated, at least by the the smart set.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And have we talked about A.S. Klein? I think we've mentioned A.S.
We
Klein.
have many times. Poetry in Translation is his website.
And really good stuff.
Very good stuff.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So listeners, if you want to kind of check out a huge library of classical works in translation.
Right.
Yes, A.S. Klein.
Good stuff there.
Yep.
All right. So what are we going to give the listeners today?
Well, we're going to pick up where we left off, hopefully, if we can remember where we left off. We're going to continue to look at Epicurean philosophy, and we're going to start digging in specifically into Lucretius's De Rerum Natura,
Yeah, the poem itself.
the poem itself, and see what it's all about.
Yep. Or as I like to call it, with a nod to Don Henley, the heart of the matter.
Oh, nice. I with a nod to Taco Bell,
Right.
would call it El Chalupa Grande.
El Chalupa Grande? Is there such a thing?
No, there's a chalupa.
But there's not a Chalupa Grande.
I'm sure you can get it in various sizes, all of them.
But that is your
unhealthy.
current rendering. That's the best thing you got for De Rerum Natura.
I didn't say it was the best. It's what I
Okay.
got right now.
El Chalupa Grande.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
The Don Henley, The Heart of the Matter.
Yes.
I like that. That's nice.
That's what De Rerum Natura is,
Yeah.
right? I'll repeat myself from last week since this is the review portion.
Yes.
A title is supposed to be descriptive, tell you what's in the book, and it's supposed to be, in some ways, memorable.
Right. Attractive.
Correct. De Rerum Natura on the nature of things fails on both counts, but maybe the heart of the matter gets to it.
I like that. I mean, do you think that, that title, De Rerum Natura, do we even know that's the title that Lucretius gave it? Was that tacked on by some
I think Lucretius
scribe?
gave it that title.
Okay.
Cicero responds to it, later on with his De Natura Deorum,
That's true.
the nature of the gods.
Right. And in Virgil refers to him also in the Georgics along those lines.
That's right. The one who knows the causus rerum,
Right.
The causes of things, right?
But it's a weak title even from Lucretius. I think it was a swing and a miss from him as well.
You think so?
Yeah. I mean, it's in Latin as in a literal English rendering. It's not all that catchy.
It's a swerve.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to talk about that later. The Clinamen.
Yes.
All right.
All right.
So we need to begin, Jeff, then with a little bit of a review for things we talked about last week.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about Epicurus and Epicureanism.
Okay.
Not in too much detail because it's all there in the first episode.
Are you saying I'm going to go into too much detail?
I'm just trying to put the brakes on.
Okay.
Right. But you've shown restraint earlier in this episode. I'm hoping you'll show it again.
All right,
Yeah.
then. Epicurus, born in 341, died in 270, right?
Mm-hmm.
He developed the system of Epicureanism, which, as we all know, places pleasure as the highest good and pain as the worst kind of evil. So
Right.
the goal in life is to attain the highest pleasure and avoid the worst kinds of evils. And if you can do that, you arrive at a state called ataraxia,
Yes.
just outside of Cleveland.
I've driven around.
Have you been through ataraxia?
Yeah, exactly. It's no Toledo.
No, I'll tell you.
But as we were talking last time, this issue of pleasure has been kind of, an Epicurean understanding of pleasure has been twisted over the centuries, and Epicurean pleasure is spending time with your friends, living.
You say as opposed to the caricature.
To the caricature of a kind of hedonism.
Correct.
Right. And so for Epicurus, the greatest pleasure in life is spending time with one's friends.
It's friendship, true friendship.
True friendship. Yeah.
Along the lines of an Aristotelian idea that a true friend is an alter idem, is another same, right? It's a person of similar character, similar interests, similar tastes, and because we naturally love ourselves, we like someone who is like us,
right,
and has a lot of those qualities.
Right.
So opposites don't attract in this sense.
No, you want to be with like-minded people who kind of share your interests and share your values, live a simple life, largely or completely divorced from public life.
Correct.
Yes.
And that's how you get the ataraxia. So the Greek verb tarasso means to stir things up, to mess things up, right? To, stick the spatula of human passion into the, boiling tub of human activity. You with me still?
I was just reminded that the spatulas of human passion were on sale at Target this week. Go on, please.
You mess it all up.
Yes.
And that's what tarasso means, the verb tarasso. So the ataraxia means that you're not in that state.
Yeah.
No spatula, no boiling tub of human passions and interpersonal dynamics. You are removed from all of that.
Right.
So as we'll see, this is by way of prolepsis, anticipation. Lucretius says there's something really, really satisfying about sitting on the shore and watching other individuals floundering at sea as they go down in a shipwreck.
There's something. What about that?
You heard what I said. Yeah. Really, really satisfying.
Okay.
You don't take pleasure in their torture and destruction, but you have a strong sense of what you have been spared from.
Oh, I see.
And so you're at peace, ataraxia.
Oh.
So this is different than the Stoic notion of apatheia.
Yeah.
So apatheia is you don't feel anything at all, no emotions whatsoever. You're kind of like a Vulcan, you're Spock. No emotions, no feelings. If you have ataraxia, you feel things. They just don't tip over the apple cart of your life.
Gotcha.
Everything is equanimity.
This reminds me of when I went to see Titanic in the theater years ago. Have you seen Titanic?
I will not admit it on air.
Okay.
Yes.
I was dragged to this film by the woman I was dating at the time.
Who is now your wife?
No, this is
okay.
Pre-wife.
Say no more.
Okay, all right. And at the end of that movie, of course, you know how the Titanic ends. The ship, it goes down. Not to spoil
spoiler alert.
And we got into an argument because I hated the movie, and we had this argument about how I didn't feel anything for the people
when Leonardo
goes down and
with his arms outstretched, and
right. And but the only thing I found entertaining about that scene was I knew that I would soon be freed from this viewing experience.
Were people in the theater crying and weeping?
It was ridiculous. This was in Chicago.
Okay,
and it was
why do you say it like that? Had the Titanic visited Chicago or something?
No, it was like close to opening night. There had been a lot of buzz about that movie, so the theater was absolutely packed.
Right.
And I could not wait for that thing to be over.
Right. Sink the ship already is what you were saying.
So I took pleasure in watching people suffering and jumping off the ship, but I wasn't reveling in their physical suffering. I was going, this has got to be close to being over.
Right. So that's a little different than Lucretius. I like it.
All right.
But Lucretius isn't reveling in their physical suffering. He's thinking, I'm safe from that.
I'm safe from that, right.
I'm safe from that. And there's a kind of pleasure in seeing, when you drive by the car accident, if you're a person of good moral character, hopefully, you have genuine compassion for those persons. You might even pray for them. But there must be a little bit of you that says, whoa, that was close.
Right.
If I had not turned left instead of right, 20 seconds later, that could be me.
Right. Can I throw in another pop culture anecdote?
Throw away.
Okay. Were you familiar with the band The Traveling Wilburys back in the day?
Every episode, you ask me 4 or 5 questions if I know this or that pop reference. But the Traveling Wilburys, I think, are a legitimate supergroup.
They were a supergroup.
Bob Dylan's in it?
Yes, good.
Willie Nelson?
No. Tom Petty. Bob Dylan.
Tom Petty, but hold on.
Yeah.
Bob Dylan, Janet Jackson.
Janet Jackson she auditioned what was cut.
Okay.
Right? And Roy Orbison.
And Britney Spears.
And will you stop already?
Okay.
And Jeff Lynne.
Who?
All right.
Who?
Jeff Lynne from Electric Light Orchestra. Oh, you need to go to
Is he a musician?
Oh, big time. Yeah.
Don't be so indignant.
Anyways, Roy Orbison, well, they were in the middle of being the supergroup. He had a heart attack and he died.
Oh.
Yes. And there's a story that as the news filtered out amongst the band members,
Right.
George Harrison, the former Beatle, who was also
Yes.
one of the Wilburys, he called Tom Petty, and Petty picked up the phone, and without even saying any words of introduction, Harrison said, "Aren't you glad it wasn't you?"
No.
Yes. I mean, that's the cheeky style of George Harrison.
The British wit, is that the idea?
Exactly right. That,
So was
live at
Petty one of the
Pudlian.
traveling
He was.
Wilburys?
Yes. He also has passed
Now
away.
deceased.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. So there's just a few Wilburys left, not many. Yeah. But at any
Their
rate,
travels are almost at an end, we might say.
Yes, exactly. So
What are we talking about tonight? This is Lucretius Nephalor, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. But Harrison saw the death of their friend, and his little joke was, playing on the fact that, in that moment he was glad. He's sad for his friend, but glad it wasn't him.
So that is ataraxia.
There we go.
Not disturbed by anything, you retain equanimity.
Right.
So Epicurus, 341 to 70, developed the notion of ataraxia. The three philosophical schools of the Hellenistic era, right? Epicureans, Stoics, Academics are the third one. We're not going to talk about them. Those are the ones who are the skeptics, can't tell if anything's true. Go listen to the Gorgias episode, ladies and
Exactly.
gentlemen. How many ships can your face launch? If you want to learn about the predecessors of academism.
Right.
Now we come down to 1st century BC. Lucretius, our man, born in about 95, died around 55.
Right.
And we said last time that what's really unique about Lucretius is that he brings these Epicurean ideas into a Roman context where they clearly don't belong.
Right. And that has to do with, what was valued in society.
That's right, the mos maiorum.
The mos maiorum,
traditions of our ancestors.
Right.
Public service, right? If you're a Wilbury, you got to travel. You can't just take your... Is that going to work?
Yes, I like it. Keep going.
You can't just take yourself out of circulation.
Right, exactly
like
right.
that.
Yeah, and as we're talking about it, it makes me think that, Epicureanism must have been, it certainly wouldn't have flown in, I don't think, in 5th century Athens, where you have kind of the democracy, kind of the dust up of democracy, and kind of the expectation that all citizens would be part of public life. I'm just getting curious how it. And I don't think we didn't talk about this last week about how Epicurus kind of sits there in that moment between 5th century Athens and really the rise of Rome at its height. What was happening there that kind of allowed for this moment? Why did Epicurus' ideas take root then in the kind of post-Alexandrian time period?
Well, I think we alluded to it.
Did
right?
we?
You gave me some grief, as is your wont.
Yeah.
About how I was being inconsistent, allegedly saying that architecture reflected human dynamics.
Oh yes, exactly.
I said that this was the rise of the large villa inside the Hellenistic city, where everyone turned inward. So out in the stinking streets of Pompeii, or wherever the case may be, there's animals and livestock and all that kind of stuff.
Sewage.
Well, yes, I didn't want to say it. The delicate ears of our listeners. You then go through your front door, and now you are in a paradisical garden.
Right.
On the inside, you're shutting out the outside world.
Right, and then I think we also mentioned the rise of the nation state.
Correct.
There's less opportunity for immediate public life, perhaps. And
That's right.
Makes this kind of turn easier.
That's correct.
Okay.
So those who are going to rule, they're a very small aristocracy now. Gone are the days of the real citizen soldier, the hoplite, who can come from humble origins. The hero of Aristophanes, distinguish himself, and then take his role in the state. Those days are long gone.
Long gone.
Right. So we have a second opening quote, you might say. Opening after 18 minutes?
Oh, goodness. We're still opening?
We're still opening.
Okay. Well, lay it on us, would you?
Okay. So this is from the Smith translation, Martin Ferguson Smith, published by Hackett. This is taken from the introduction. He says, Gaius Memmius, a member of a senatorial family and the husband of Sulla's daughter Fausta, until he divorced her in 55, had been tribune. Perhaps in 62. He became praetor in 58. We're going to get into the weeds here in a minute. And governor of the province of Bithynia in Northwest Asia Minor in 57. 54, he stood for the consulship but was unsuccessful. And in 52, after being found guilty of using bribery in the elections of 54, and who doesn't, went into exile in Greece, where, as we shall see shortly, he showed himself to be no friend of the Epicureans. He is said by Cicero, who was on friendly terms with him, to have been accomplished in Greek literature but scornful of Latin, and to have been a talented orator but lazy. He may have been a lazy orator, but he was more energetic in another direction. His adultery with the wives of two of his political enemies, the brothers Marcus and Lucius Lucullus, is reported by Cicero in a letter dated 20 January of 60 BC.
So the million-dollar question is, why on earth would Lucretius dedicate this poem to this guy?
Yes, that is the million-dollar question.
Right.
And the answer that Smith gives is along the lines of maybe Lucretius was attempting to steer him toward a life of more moderation and constraint.
Which I think is really interesting. So the tract was not just about the whole enchilada, it was about trying to convert this guy. Now, we have no idea what their relationship was, right?
No, that's correct.
No clue. Because he seems to be amongst the most least Epicurean of guys.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, I think Smith goes on to say, which is an interesting suggestion, is he suggests that, while Cicero may have admired his poetry, there's that one little line that he leaves us behind that says there's great artistry in this guy, that in terms of philosophy, Cicero would have had very little use.
That's correct.
For the poem. But he says that his friend Atticus is Epicurean, and that there might be the link. The link.
Yes, that's Titus Pomponius Atticus, to
Right.
whom he wrote so many of his letters. Well, let me read a little bit of that Cicero reference, because Smith includes it for us as well. This is from the introduction. The merits of Lucretius' poetry were acknowledged at once, and he exercised a considerable influence on his immediate successors. We saw that already. I'm editorializing here. We saw that already with Ovid, and we mentioned it with Virgil as well.
Right.
To continue the quote, Cicero, writing to his brother on 11 February 54, comments, "The poetry of Lucretius is, as you say in your letter, rich in a brilliant genius, yet highly artistic."
Yeah. So he was making waves. He was crossing philosophical lines.
Yes.
He was widely appreciated.
So how does it go? You put a little bit of honey around the rim to make the medicine go down.
That's right.
And so it was appealing to someone like Cicero, who otherwise would have no interest in Lucretian philosophy.
Right. And Cicero must have appreciated it on a kind of pure linguistic level. Cicero as one of the major shapers of Latin as a literary language, as a spoken language, he must have seen something in Lucretius that says, yeah, this is my kind of guy.
That's right. And Lucretius himself, about 130, 140 lines into Book 1, will talk about the difficulty he has in terms of putting this system of ideas, taking it from Greek into Latin.
Right.
But before we get to that, we have to talk about the hatred of religion. I guess maybe hatred's not the right word, but how he intends to set people free from the fear of religion.
Right. Would you say that that's more or less the thesis of this work?
Yes, the fear of religion and the fear of death.
Right.
The two go together. The purpose of religion is to reinforce the fear of death. These two twin fears together, they mess up your ataraxia.
Right.
So I'm going to read some of the Latin here, if you don't mind, starting on line 62. And then Jeff's going to give us this wonderful translation from Smith. So it goes like this. Humana antakolos foide cum vita jaceret inter riso presagravi sub re legione, quae caput a caeli regionibus ostendebat, horribili super aspectu mortalibus instans, primum graius homo mortalis tolera contra, est aculos ausus primus quab sistera contra.
Very nicely done.
Thank you.
Right. Again, the dactylic hexameter, the epic meter.
Right.
For this poem.
Yes.
And Smith's translation then. When all could see that human life lay groveling ignominiously in the dust, crushed beneath the grinding weight of superstition, which from the celestial regions displayed its face, lowering over mortals with hideous scowl, the first who dared to lift mortal eyes to challenge it, the first who ventured to confront it boldly, was a Greek.
Yes.
And who's he talking about?
Well, this is Epicurus.
Oh, that guy.
Of course,
again, yes.
yeah. Graius homo. It was the first. It's really interesting to me that Smith translates here from line 63. It's gravi sub religione. So the Latinate among our audience who may have been listening, they may be heard in that second line that human life, right, lay oppressed, gravi sub religione, beneath heavy religion. But Smith translates it as superstition.
Interesting.
Did you notice that?
Yeah. Well, religio is one of those words that, I mean, it looks so obvious. Oh, that must mean religion.
Right.
But it's, I mean, there's a huge tapestry of things that are attached to that, right? Especially if you're talking in a Roman context.
Sure. Not only that, but it's like a bar of soap in the shower. Let's be honest.
It is.
It's one slippery character.
It is. So I think superstition, that's not a bad translation.
Well, I think what Smith is trying to do is to draw a line between true and false religion, right? Superstition is religio falsa. You know, the true religion needs no modifier, I suppose, if such a thing exists.
Right.
So I don't want to quarrel with the translation necessarily, but it's interesting, and I think it's thought-provoking for us. Could an Epicurean have a true kind of religion, or is all religion inherently vitiated by this fear?
Forgive my ignorance, as you often do.
No.
I mean, I don't know.
I never forgive your ignorance.
I don't know a ton about Epicurus himself, but was this in acts that he ground the fear of religion?
Yes.
This was something that was kind of at the tip of his tongue, at the end of his fingertips all the time.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So he anticipated, the Marxian explanation of religion by, I don't know what, 2,300 years,
right.
Something like that.
Right.
Marxian or Marxist, I'm not sure which is the right term, but
the opiate of the
right.
masses.
Karl
yes.
Marx's statement that religion is kind of like the useful idiot. It keeps the keeps the masses at bay, and so it has some use, but it has no truth to it. There's really nothing to it, and so Epicurus. I think one understanding of his thought is that it's sympathetic to that interpretation.
Okay. Yeah.
So we go on from this then about, the glowering problems of organized religion. What does Epicurus, what does he do? Lucretius' hero Epicurus, Jeff, what does he do once he notices that religion is really the problem with her scowling gaze from heaven?
Well, let me just continue on with the Smith translation. This is some heavy stuff here.
Okay.
So he says the first man to confront it boldly was a Greek. This man neither the reputation of the gods, nor thunderbolts, nor heaven's menacing rumbles could daunt. Rather, all the more they roused the ardor of his courage and made him long to be the first to burst the bolts and bars of nature's gates. And so his mind's might and vigor maybe some of that too. Vigor prevailed, and on he marched far beyond the blazing battlements of the world. He's like a Marvel superhero, this guy.
Yeah.
Man. In thought and understanding, journeying all through the measureless universe. And from this expedition, he returns to us in triumph with his spoils, knowledge of what can arise and what cannot, and again, by what law each thing has its scope restricted and its deeply implanted boundary stone. So now the situation is reversed. Superstition is flung down and trampled underfoot, and we are raised to heaven by victory.
Yes.
That's some heavy language.
It is, yeah. It's brilliant. So it's wonderful poetry. But the idea is, to interpret it a little bit, is Epicurus was the first man to dare to say, hold on now, this religion with all of its threats about the afterlife and what's coming when you die, all this is not based in reality, Epicurus says.
Yeah.
And Epicurus goes on this massive thought experiment. That's really what Lucretius is describing. So his mind's might and vigor prevailed, and on he marched far beyond the blazing battlements of the world. So in his mind, he took this big trip throughout the universe, and he reasoned his way, not by observation, right? Not in an Aristotelian kind of let's observe the natural world, but through these careful thought experiments.
Right.
He reasoned his way to the truth about all that is.
And this the way he describes it too is, I mean, this is more of the honey on the cup, right? He's describing this is like Heracles going off to his labors, right?
But I think he also, in addition to that, which I think is absolutely correct, he also has genuine admiration, right?
Right.
This is what do they call this? Fan literature? I don't know what it's called.
Fan fiction?
Fan fiction,
yes.
right. This is Lucretius talking about his hero, Epicurus, the only person who was not afraid of the gods and their thunderbolts and all of that stuff, and he figured it out.
Right.
He went on the hard journey.
Yeah. I mean, I think elsewhere in Smith's introduction, he talks about these anecdotes of Epicurus when he was first gathering followers, and like some guy heard him speak, and he fell at his feet,
right,
and worshipped him as if he were a god.
Right.
Yeah. So
well, it's partly the revolutionary nature of his thought. It was so unlike anything else at the time.
Yeah.
It had this shocking effect.
Right.
Well, we need to continue with this But before we go to the break, I wanted to float another possible title.
Oh, you got one? You got more?
Do? Oh, yeah.
What do you got?
Well, this is from Dr. Seuss. This is from one of his books.
Okay.
The title of which is, and I think this works just fine for De Rerum Natura, The Shape of Me and Other Stuff.
I like that a lot.
That's brilliant, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, not on my part. Seuss got it.
That's brilliant.
The Shape of Me and Other Stuff. That's De Rerum Natura right there.
Right there.
This episode of Ad Nauseam is brought to you by the good people of Ratio Coffee in Portland, Oregon. My friend Mark Helweg. Did you know that Mark was my student?
I think I did know that.
Yeah, just briefly.
Yeah, and
Right.
he found his way from the classics into the lucrative world of coffee.
Well, he continued on with the classics for a while at another institution.
Yeah.
And then he just became this fabulous entrepreneur.
Right.
And he created
the Ratio 6 and Ratio 8.
That's right. 2 fabulous coffee machines. I've got the 8.
I've got the 6.
That's right. Just this morning, I brewed up a cup of coffee and had a fellow come over to help me with some work on the house. And I said, would you like a cup of coffee? And he said, I'd like a cup of coffee. And I thought, I am so glad that I get to serve my friend a premium cup of coffee and not some, I don't know, what should we call it? Hull bilge?
Exactly right. That's the way to lose a friend.
That's
right.
Right.
Now, did you steer him into the kitchen so that he could see this beautiful
No,
machine?
he was working on my house.
Oh.
You stay outside and work on the house.
You stay out there.
I'll bring the coffee.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So I brewed up a pot. I let the water course through the metallic veins, come down through the Fibonacci head. I think the listener knows the routine by now.
Yes.
Off gas, the CO2 into the biosphere.
In the bloom stage.
That's the bloom stage.
It's the bloom stage, yeah.
What comes next?
Then the brew stage.
The brew stage.
Yes, and then
so it's a bloom with a brew.
It's really again? Really? Yes, it's a bloom with a brew.
And then what happens?
And then it's ready.
It's ready.
It's ready. Yeah.
There's a little LED light that tracks across the bottom of this gorgeous machine.
Right.
How would you describe its aesthetic?
It's sleek.
Sleek?
It's modern, but not too modern.
No.
It looks great on my countertop.
No jagged edges, modern.
No, it's very smooth. My kids like to watch it in action.
Oh, yeah.
It's silently kind of
Are
bubbles
they going
its way
back to
down.
school this fall? Or are they just going to stay home and watch the
Watch the
ratio?
machine. I got a special I got special permission for them just to watch the machine.
Okay,
Yes.
you can assign them homework afterward.
right. Here, get them started on coffee.
Yeah, question 1: what comes after bloom?
Right. But no, it's a beautiful machine. It makes great coffee. The difference between the coffee that this machine makes in my previous machine, it's night and day.
Night and day.
Yeah, great
you
stuff.
probably are filled with regret when you think back at the coffee you used to
All
drink.
the time that I wasted. Yes.
The hot, scorchy pad underneath that burns it. Who wants to drink burnt coffee?
No, and there's none of that in the Ratio 6 or the 8. Right.
So what can our listeners do?
Well, if they go to ratiocoffee.com,
Okay.
they can order up a Ratio 6 machine,
Right.
the one I've got, and get 15% off if they type in the code ANCO.
That stands for Ad Nauseam Coffee. Right. Comes in how many colors?
But I have the stainless steel.
Yes.
There's walnut, I believe.
No. That's you're thinking of the 8.
Oh, sorry.
We're going to be running a special on the 8.
Okay.
So those who want the 8, which is the great granddaddy,
Hang on.
Right.
So.
But the 6 comes in the stainless steel,
Yep.
the white, and the black matte.
That's right.
Ratiocoffee.com, 15% off. Coupon code ANCO.
This episode also brought to you by Hackett Publishing. Hackett Publishing, for the last 40 plus years, based in Indianapolis and Cambridge, have been bringing wonderful, affordable, erudite translations of the classics, and not just the classics, but from many corners of the humanities and cultural studies. I love their translations. I have many of them on my shelf. I've used them in my own courses. Dave, what do you like about Hackett Publishing?
Well, Jeff, I'm glad you asked. I am right now looking at Hackett's website.
Okay, what do you got?
And it's just some amazing stuff here. We've got Margaret Cavendish, Philosophical Letters Abridged, edited by Deborah Boyle. We have Buddhism as Philosophy, 2nd edition. So you see, it's not just Western stuff, Eastern stuff as well. How Do You Know? A dialogue by Gordon Barnes. And then classics, Aristotle's Eudemian Ethics, translated by the famous C.D.C. Reeve.
Yes.
This is in the Aristotle series, and Plato's Meno. So the gamut, really, of anything that you could want for your studies. They got Asian studies, classical studies, the famous Lingua Latina per se illustrata, history, Latin American studies, literature, modern languages, pretty much everything.
Everything. We got a deep bench. to use a sports metaphor.
Yeah, that's from hockey. Is that
I think it's any sport that has a bench.
any sport that has a bench?
Right. I associate with basketball. But,
Okay.
yeah.
Does badminton have a bench?
Yeah, it's just for when you got to sit down and take a break.
Right.
Yeah, you're huffing and puffing out there.
So what should the listener do?
Well, if you want to take advantage of this, go to hackettpublishing.com. That's HACKETT publishing.com. And you can get, I believe it's 20% off and free shipping.
Right. First, they have to set down the racket and the shuttlecock.
Exactly. Right. That's good advice. And whatever you're
Absolutely.
doing. Right.
And then they get 20%.
And free shipping.
That's a large number.
It's huge. It's huge.
And free shipping.
Yeah.
They have to enter a coupon code,
Yes,
though.
which I believe is AN
20.
2021.
That's right. That'd be the current year.
That is.
All right. Check it out.
And finally, this episode also brought to you by Odd Astra Roasters. Odd Astra Roasters is a veteran-owned specialty coffee roaster located in Hillsdale, Michigan. Founded in Kansas in 2018, Odd Astra Roasters takes its name from the Kansas state motto, Ad Astra per Aspera, to the stars through adversity. This morning, I brewed up for the first time the Whitney blend.
Yes.
And it was nice.
It was very good. Named after a Hillsdale College student and Civil War hero.
Yes. Now, has that moved up your list on your ranking
It's
board?
a strong second. It's not at Tenebrae level, but delicious coffee. Nutty, rich, earthy aroma. Very, very good.
Very good stuff. Yes, excellent. So, listeners, the attractive packaging too, the poetry series is also a really great option for those wanting to read a great poem while drinking even better coffee. So head to oddastraroasters.com, ADASTRA roasters.com, and you get 10% off. 10% off your any order when you put
15.
15,
Right.
Even,
I hate to, well, I love to correct you, but 15%.
Even better when you put in the coupon code ANAA at checkout.
Okay, Jeff, as we get back into it, I got to take a step back.
You do.
Yes, there's a little bit here at the beginning of book one that, I neglected to put in its proper order. Mm-hmm. And it's just such a delicious little episode.
You can't leave it out.
I can't leave it out.
Okay.
I feel like we would be robbing the listener of something that's truly remarkable.
All right, well, take us there then.
All right, so I'm going to read a little bit of the Smith translation. Meanwhile, this is part of the invocation, that is, Lucretius talking to Venus. Meanwhile, cause the barbarous business of warfare to be lulled to sleep over every land and sea. For you alone have the influence to obtain for mortals the blessing of tranquil peace, since barbarous war is the province of Mars, mighty in arms, who often stretches himself back upon your lap, vanquished by the never-healing wound of love, throwing back his handsome neck and gazing up at you in open-mouthed wonderment, he feasts his greedy eyes with love. And as he reclines, his breath hangs upon your lips. As he rests upon your holy body, bend, goddess, to enfold him in your arms. And from your lips, worshipful lady, let a stream of sweet, coaxing words flow in an appeal on behalf of the Romans for placid peace. For at this, I'm not done yet. Okay. For at this perpetuous time in my country's history, I cannot tackle my task with tranquil mind, and the gravity of the situation is such that the noble descendant of the Memii, that's Memmius, cannot fail the cause of public security.
So we have that reference there. He talks about the tempestuous times. This is
right.
A way of kind of solidifying the dates of Lucretius. So he's living in that time, that turbulent time of civil war, and where everything's being kind of tossed on its head.
Yes,
towards the end of the middle of the first century.
Right. So this is the second generation, right, of the Civil War. The first was of Sulla and Marius. Mm-hmm. Now this is the triumvirate, right? He died in 55, so they're coming up now on Pompey and Caesar and Crassus.
Yeah,
going to duel it out. He died before the third wave of civil war came on. But this is such a lovely poetic device. Venus is the one whom he invokes, and she is ostensibly the mother of all the Romans through Aeneas, but they're devoting all of their love and passion to Mars, the god of war.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think this is really interesting. I just want to point out a couple of things. In last week's episode, we noticed how Lucretius presents Venus as almost a kind of syncretistic goddess, a goddess more like Demeter or broadly some goddess of nature. And what I think is so interesting is that so he gives us this Venus from Greco-Roman mythology, but he's messing with her identity a little bit. And in the passage you just read, he shifts it back to kind of that classic portrayal of Venus with her lover Mars.
Right.
And so it's
Not her husband, Hephaestus, right, Vulcan,
right,
but Mars, with whom she was caught in adultery.
Yes. And the second thing I want to point out is just how Mars was such a much more important god to the Romans than Ares was for the Greeks. Ares for the Greeks what represented kind of the madness, the wildness of war. But there's that scene in the Iliad where Ares is wounded and he goes up to Olympus and Zeus says, more or less, I know you're my son, but I hate you too.
Yeah,
right?
You're a brutal dullard.
Yes, right. Whereas Mars was much more kind of front and center in the Roman pantheon as a god that could be in service to the Roman project.
Yeah, to the state.
Yeah.
So there was the temple of Mars Ultor, right? Mars the Avenger. You're exactly right. Very important. And so now Lucretius very cleverly says, I'm going to invoke Venus and I'm going to talk about how Mars is in Venus's arms. And I'm going to plead with Venus to just calm him down a bit. These mad Romans with their carnage and slaughter and killing, this kind of almost pacifistic impulse is again very un-Roman.
Right. Yeah, that also struck me too. It's like, again, how would this have played? I know that after the dust settles and Augustus finds himself in charge. I mean, this is long after Lucretius's death.
Right. Not too long.
Not too long.
It's between 55
decades.
and 31. It's just 25 years
right.
or so.
Augustus does make a show of displaying Mars, seated with his shield at his side. This is Mars at rest.
This is on the Areopagus?
I can't remember where it's
okay.
from. But Mars as a peace bringer. But we're still years away from that.
Right.
We're in the thick of it. When Lucretius is writing it.
Yes, and if the listener is interested in art, and why shouldn't you be?
Right.
You want to go online and check out the painting by Botticelli, Mars and Venus. So this is 1485 or 1483, and it's in the National Gallery in London. So on the left-hand side of the image is Venus, whose foot is kind of oddly elongated in order to frame the whole picture. You remember that?
Yes, yeah.
And she's wide awake and looking lovely like she does in the Birth of Venus, also by Botticelli. And far off on the right is Mars, whose head is kind of lolled back, and he doesn't look at all like a warrior. He's completely just, dissolved in love. Meanwhile, there are all these little fawns that are sneaking around with his armor and his helmet and his
playing
lance.
with his stuff.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
it's so funny, and it's clearly inspired by this very passage. It's directly from there.
Exactly. It's such an interesting idea that Venus too. I think this Aphrodite is a goddess who's been largely misunderstood or kind of mistranslated through the ages. We think of her generically as a goddess of love, but she's a destructive goddess.
Right. Love is terrible and uncontrolled.
It's uncontrolled. The uncontrolled passions. But this idea that these two uncontrolled deities kind of cancel each other out.
Would you like me to connect this artfully to an earlier portion of this very episode?
I would like that very much.
Okay, Roy Orbison, Love Hurts.
Love. I think you're thinking of Love Hurts is by Nazareth.
No, it's Roy Orbison.
Would you sing a little bit then?
I can't remember all the words. You know this song is by Orbison. Come on.
I think you're right. I'm the one that always pops in my head when I hear that title is the one by Nazareth. But I think it's a cover of the same. That's
a metal cover, right?
Well, I mean they were a metal band, but this is where they're one ballad.
Ballady.
Yeah, exactly.
Love is like a cloud, holds a lot of rain.
There you go. Very nice.
That's it, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Was I a little pitchy?
No, I don't want to go all Randy Jackson on you, but.
All right, so we took care of that. We got the Venus and Mars episode in like we wanted to.
Yes.
Now we skip ahead to Iphigenia et Aulis.
Right.
And you're going to read some of that for us?
Yes, I will.
The dangers and the horrors of religion.
Here we go. In this connection, I fear that you may perhaps imagine that you are starting on the principles of an irreligious philosophy and setting out on a path of wickedness. It's kind of, I like how he kind of anticipates lots of the main
objections
of criticism that.
Right.
Yeah.
You're going to put down religion, Lucretius? Come on.
How dare you? But he goes on, but in fact, more often it is that very superstition that has perpetrated wicked and irreligious deeds. Consider how at Aulis, the elite of Greece's chieftains, the flower of its manhood, foully polluted the altar of the virgin goddess of the crossroads with the blood of Iphigenia. As soon as the ribbon had been fastened about her virgin locks so that it flowed down either cheek in equal lengths, and as soon as she had noticed her father standing sorrowfully before the altars, and near him attendants trying to keep the knife concealed, and the people moved at the sight of her to streaming tears, struck dumb with dread, and sinking on her knees, she groped for the ground. Poor girl! Little could it help her that at such a time that she had been the first to give the king the name of father, for uplifted by masculine hands she was led, trembling with terror, to the altars. Instead of being escorted by the wedding hymn's cheerful ring, when the solemn service of the sacrifice had been performed, she was to be immolated by her father, and fall a sorrowful and sinless victim of a sinful crime, cheated of marriage for which she was just ready. And all to what purpose? To enable a fleet to receive the blessing of a prosperous and propitious departure. Such heinous acts could superstition prompt.
Some gripping prose there. I mean, it's poetry, but the prose translation. And the word that is used again there for superstition is religio.
What same word?
Yeah, it's religion.
I have to think that Lucretius must have been familiar with Euripides' play, Iphigenia Aulis.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, the imagery is ripped from the pages.
Yes, it's fresh and bright. But is Lucretius cherry picking?
I mean, this is I would say, this is a brutal episode from Greek mythology, out of many brutal episodes, but I think kind of unique in terms of like a human sacrifice. Right.
Well, I usually like to tell my students, as I'm sure you do too, there are a few things that the Greeks say they never do, right? Typically, no incest and no cannibalism, which is always connected to human sacrifice.
Right.
And they say these are uniquely Eastern things. Now, I'm sure they're not, but that's how the Greeks view themselves. Mm-hmm. And yet, all throughout their literature, those are the themes, right? Incest, Oedipus, and human sacrifice attached to cannibalism. Mm-hmm. But is Lucretius cherry picking? Because we can all think of the excesses of religion. We can think of instances where religion did bring suffering and hardship. But is that all religion is?
Right. Yeah. I mean, in that regard, yes, he's cherry picking here. But I think, for his broader purpose, I think he makes the point he wants to make, and he moves on from there. I mean, I think this is part of that kind of that promise of the honey on the cup. He uses a kind of a grand dramatic episode to kind of build his argument off. I can imagine, philosophers of the day picking this up and saying, "Well, come on, Lucretius, what are you trying to do here? Is this a serious argument, or is this just kind of a more kind of a fanciful, dramatic approach to your Epicureanism?"
What do you think about the underlying claim, though? Are you sympathetic to it? On the whole, religion does more harm than good?
No, I mean, I don't think this is a good a passage that illustrates that very well. I mean,
okay.
When I teach this episode, it's always more about kind of the immorality of Agamemnon than it is about the.
So this is a one-off, in other words,
right?
Human sacrifice, killing one's own daughter. This is not part and parcel of Greek religion.
No, not at all. And it's not, he mentions the virgin goddess of the crossroads, a liminal place, by the way. This is Artemis. This is Diana, right? And this is really an outlier for her as well in terms of kind of her portrayal in mythology and Greek religion too.
So now we look at what we were talking about before, right? The difficulty for a Latin poet to get these Greek ideas into the Latin language.
Right.
And as we mentioned, Lucretius talks about it quite self-consciously, and he does so long about line 136. Shall I read a little bit of that?
Please do.
All right. So he says, I am wide awake to the difficulty of the task of illuminating the obscure discoveries of the Greeks in Latin verse. The main obstacles are the inadequacy of our language and the novelty of my subject, factors that entail the coinage of many new terms. But your fine qualities, Memmius, his patron, and the hope of gaining the pleasure of your delightful friendship spur me to make a success of my task, however laborious, and induce me to forego sleep and spend the still calm of the night in quest of words and verses that will enable me to light the way brightly for your mind and thus help you to see right to the heart of hidden things. He's like an undergraduate.
Yeah, just staying up all night.
Lucretius is pulling an all-nighter.
Right.
For the sake of Memmius, because he wants his friendship.
Wants his friendship. He also wants his money.
That's right.
But he also wants him, in that last line, he wants him to kind of come around to the truth as he sees it. Yes.
Yeah. Did you notice that in the last bit there, we have another perfect title for De Rerum Natura.
I missed it. What did you say?
The last little bit there, the heart of hidden things.
Oh, I like that a lot.
That is good.
Be a great title for an album.
You think so?
Album, novel, yes.
Oh, here's another suggestion with apologies to Jerome Kern, and that would be All the Things You Are.
All the Things You Are.
Do you know that song?
I don't know that one.
Yeah, it's jazz.
Okay.
You forgive me for the rare jazz reference. You know, I dislike jazz almost as much as I dislike musicals.
Really? Okay. Yeah.
All the Things You Are, that catches it, doesn't it?
It does catch it. Although I'm the heart of hidden things. That's in my top slot right now. Yeah.
All right.
Perfect. All right, Dave. So the last thing we want to cover tonight is a bit of atomism, right?
Yes, we want to talk a little bit about Lucretius's view of how things come to be.
Okay.
And so the atoms and the void, they're an important part of that. So here in Book 1, he's talking specifically about how is it that the world has the shape that it has? Why is it filled with so many different creatures? And so on and so forth. And he has a view which is a very clear denial of what in Christian terms is called creatio ex nihilo, creation from nothing.
Yes.
He has a view that there are seeds, these semina, that are buried deep in the structure of the world, and they grow up and they come to fruition, and they ripen, and they give birth to all the different forms that we see. So some have seen in this, a strong precursor of a Darwinian understanding of the world's origin.
Right.
And everything is seeded into the world, and over time they kind of develop on their own, and they come to be all of the different creatures in the different places.
But he doesn't have give us a prime mover. Unless you wanted to say Venus.
No,
Yeah.
You're right,
Yeah.
right. So the gods exist for Epicurus, but they are comprised of very fine divine atoms. He's a materialist.
Aha.
So your atoms and my atoms, no offense, I don't want to get too personal, they're blockish. And they're rough. And this is why I can see you, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. But the gods are made of atoms too, and their divine atoms are very fine, and they flow around just like they should, and this makes them invisible.
Gotcha.
So even the gods are made out of a material substance, but it's just gossamer. It's too fine for us to see with our puny eyes.
Right. Yeah.
So then he'll say along about line 270, now then, I have taught that things cannot be produced from nothing, right? So nothing comes from nothing, right? Nil ex nihilo. And also that once born, they cannot be reduced to nothing, right? So there's a permanence of matter. Once matter comes into existence, it can neither be created or destroyed. Mm-hmm. And it, I guess, was always eternal. This is resonant with Aristotle's idea of the eternality of the world. The universe has always existed. It did not have a beginning.
Yes.
That's Lucretius's idea. Mm-hmm. So the whole of the world then is divided up into these two things, atoms and the void, right? This big space. And atoms are falling through the void.
And smashing into each other.
Occasionally smashing into each other. That's correct. And this is a kind of deterministic, as all materialist philosophies tend to be, a deterministic view of all of life. If you can trace where the the billiard ball, where it goes from one side of the table and hits the next one, then it hits the next one. If you can trace it all the way back to the beginning, you can explain every motion in the world.
Except for what moved the first ball in the first place.
That's true.
Yeah.
There's also a very important idea that we haven't, I just mentioned it, alluded to it, and that is the notion of the swerve. So we'll have to talk about it in the next episode, but Lucretius is desperate to retain some concept of human free will and freedom. And he does this by talking about this notion called klinamen, or swerve. So when you want to make a decision, Jeff, when you want to listen to Nazareth instead of Roy Orbison, amazingly coincident with your desire to make that decision is a swerve of one of those material atoms. And they happen at the same time, and thus your free will is obtained.
So you're in control of your own atomism to some degree.
No, you can't control it, but it just so happens that when you want to make a decision, there's the proper kind of swerve that occasions a free choice.
Okay.
It's not completely fully understood, and it's not easy to explain.
But Dave, what if we want a deeper explanation?
Well, I would recommend that you go to one of the many fine books by A.A. Long.
A.A. Long, okay.
Anthony Long, A.A. Long. He's a very famous classical scholar. He's an Americanized Brit, so he came over to this big country. And he has written extensively, along with a fellow named Sedley, Long and Sedley, on all aspects of Epicureanism, Hellenistic philosophy generally, Stoicism. He's an expert in Stoicism. And I have a funny story about him.
Oh, do share.
Well, I was a grad student, so go listen to that episode, right? 41 Things I Hated About Grad School.
Yeah.
And Long came to the University of Iowa, where I was studying Cicero and Stoicism. And A.A. Long went into the men's room, and I thought, here's my chance. I could talk to him in person.
You did? You followed him into the bathroom?
No, I didn't follow him into the bathroom.
Yes, you did.
No, he was just giving a lecture, and we both had to use the facilities at the same time.
Okay.
So we're washing our hands, and I had this burning question, so I just asked A.A. Long the question I didn't get to ask him during, the Q&A after the lecture.
Right.
And I found out afterward that it was that question that impressed him.
Is that right?
Yeah, one of my advisors said, you made a really good impression on Long. I said, well, what was it? It was a question you asked him in the bathroom.
Do you remember the question?
No, of course not. But I do know that you got to be persistent about these things.
Definitely. So did you say, so, AA? How'd you refer to him? Was it?
Probably Professor Long.
Professor Long, exactly. Yeah.
He's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
So I was glad to get that praise, even if I had to work really hard.
That's great.
For that.
That's great.
That interaction.
Yes.
Well, Jeff, we got to wrap it up, don't we?
We do.
Where have we been in this episode?
We've been all over the place.
Right.
When you're talking about everything, you're going to go a lot of places.
Speaking of which,
yes,
I got another title for you.
Yeah.
So this is one, I don't know what the reference is where this comes from. Maybe one of the listeners does, but De Rerum Natura, turtles all the way down.
Turtles, I've heard that before, but I like it.
Okay, that's all you got?
Well, turtles all the way down. It's more abstract than, what was it, the heart of things? What was the part?
Did you like the heart of the matter, the Don Henley?
No, it was the one from Lucretius itself in the translation, the heart of hidden things.
The heart of hidden things.
That's my favorite, though. But turtles all the way down, I could be convinced.
Yeah, that's some kind of a cosmology. It's a Navajo cosmology or something like
Really?
that. It's turtles all the way down.
Okay.
One turtle standing on another turtle. That's how the world is put together.
I'm pro turtle.
Are you?
Yeah.
You didn't like the Seuss? The Shape of Me and other stuff.
No, it's good, but I'm drawn to the weirder. So turtles all the way down. I think I'll take that over Seuss.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we wandered a little bit far and wide.
We did.
Just like Lucretius does in book 1. In subsequent episodes, we got to talk about books 2 and all the way up through 6.
Yep. And so we got a lot more to cover, but maybe not as circuitous next week. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think more rectilinear.
Rectilinear sounds right to me. Now, Dave, before we go, tell us a little bit about the Moss method, would you?
Yeah, I'd love to. Well, we're running a back-to-school sale, and it's 15% off Module 1 or Module 2. We put our ads out there hoping to get some folks who are interested in learning how to go from
neophyte
to erudite.
Yes.
That's the catchphrase. And not just a back-to-school sale, 15% off, but I'm offering office hours every Friday.
Wow.
Every Friday, 10 a.m. If you are in Module 1 or Module 2, you can hop on and for an hour you get some one-on-one or maybe 5-on-1 interaction with yours truly. You can ask me anything. Ask me about Homer, Plato. I got a question about Homer this last time, Iliad Book 2, 255, memory serves.
Wow.
New Testament, just anything.
Anything.
So, helping them out with the Greek. That
sounds
the plan.
great. Yep. And act now.
That's correct.
Yes.
Get that back-to-school sale. Go to mossmethod.com. We got some people to thank, Jeff, don't we?
As always, thanks to our intrepid engineer, Mishka, who sprinkles the magic fairy dust on this thing and makes us sound a lot better than we actually do.
That's right. She takes out all of the ineptitude.
All of it. So thanks to Mishka.
We got to thank our musicians.
Yes, Ken Tamplin.
Scott Van Zen.
For all that wonderful rockin' guitar that you hear throughout the episode.
Yeah, Scott has a new album coming out.
Oh, he does?
I think it's entitled Trouble. He's very bluesy. Imagine, I think I said before, Stevie Ray Vaughan meets Eddie Van Halen.
Yes.
Some incredible stuff.
Yeah, great stuff. So, listeners, subscribe, leave a review, drop us a note, dave@adnauseam.com. Don't forget the V, or to me at jeff@adnauseam.com. Keep those comments coming. We love to hear from you. We love to respond back.
Yeah, there's been some great ones. We're so gratified by the incredible response. People seem to like this, so
Yes.
we're going to keep doing it.
We're going to keep doing it.
And if you'd like to, show people that you are taking in and keeping down the classics, you can get a limited edition AN sticker.
That's right, for $3.99.
$3.99. Go to our merch page, lurchwithmerch@nauseam.com. Jeff and I will hand sign it.
hand sign it. So
Yeah.
it's not just a sticker. It's good
No.
enough, but this is a personal note from
We're not going to put ink on the bottom of our foot and step on the envelope.
No. We would never do
Or
that.
use a potato or something like that.
No.
This is hand signed.
Hand signed, handwritten.
Check
Right.
it out.
Yep.
All right. Next week,
More Lucretius.
more Lucretius. And at long last, we come to the gustatory parting shot, which is yours, Dr. Winkle.
Yes, this comes from a certain Fuad Alakbarov, who once said, "Garlic is to my food what bass guitar is to music."
Wait a minute. What is a bass guitar to music?
I'm saying, as a fan of garlic, I think you could read this two ways. This is either an insult or a compliment, right? But as a big fan of garlic, he's saying it's the key ingredient. A good bass line, a great bass line, can change a mediocre song into
Can you
a great
give it?
song.
Sing us an example, like that famous Queen bass line that was adapted by Vanilla Ice.
Oh, for Another One Bites the Dust, right? That's an example of a very, very simple bass line,
Right.
but so catchy and so memorable that it's a smash hit right away.
And that's what garlic is to your food.
I think so. I think that's what Fuad is saying here.
And you agree?
I agree.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.